It's March 17th, 2018. A hotel room in London. A young man with pink hair sits across from two journalists, a laptop open between them, hands shaking slightly as he scrolls through folders he was never supposed to share. He's about to break a non-disclosure agreement that could end with him in prison. He talks anyway. His name is Christopher Wiley. He used to build something most people had never heard of. A machine designed to know you better than you know yourself. Not your name, not your face, your fear, your anger, your doubt, and then use it against you, one vote at a time. This is the story of how a piece of software helped decide who runs the most powerful country on Earth. And almost nobody noticed until it was already too late to stop it. To understand how something like this gets built, you have to go back further, to 2013, inside a research lab at Cambridge University. A group of psychologists and data scientists discover something unsettling almost by accident. By analyzing someone's Facebook likes alone, no interviews, no surveys, no direct contact at all, they can predict a person's personality traits with more accuracy than their own close friends could. Not their age, not their income, their psychology, their insecurities, the exact levers that move them. That single academic discovery, published quietly in a scientific journal, becomes the blueprint for an entire industry that nobody saw coming. A year later, in 2014, a data firm called Cambridge Analytica opens its doors in London. On paper, it's a marketing company. In reality, it's something closer to a weapons lab for the mind. Behind it stands a wealthy hedge fund manager bankrolling the operation, and a political strategist who understands exactly what this technology could do in the hands of a campaign willing to use it without restraint. Their pitch to clients is simple, and it's something no political consultant had ever promised before. Not persuasion. Prediction. Feed the system enough data, and it can tell you exactly which voters are movable, which ones are already lost causes, and precisely which message will push the movable ones over the edge. But that was just the beginning. To build a machine like this, they need fuel. Millions of data points, on millions of people. So they turned to the platform where people were already handing that information away for free, one like at a time. Facebook. A researcher builds a simple personality quiz, dressed up as harmless fun, the kind of thing you'd take on a lunch break and forget about by dinner. Only 270,000 people actually complete it. Here's the part almost nobody saw coming. Because of how Facebook's data sharing settings worked at the time, that quiz doesn't just harvest information from the people who took it. It reaches silently into the networks of their friends. Friends who never agreed to anything. Friends who never even heard the quiz existed. 270,000 becomes 87 million. This is where things get interesting. 87 million profiles. Political leanings. Personality traits. Psychological weak points. Mapped in granular detail. All of it collected, sorted, and quietly weaponized without a single one of those 87 million people ever clicking yes to any of it. With that data, the firm builds what they internally call psychographic profiles. Not just what state you live in or how old you are, whether you're neurotic, whether you're agreeable, whether you're the kind of person who responds to fear or the kind who responds to hope, whether you're susceptible to conspiracy framing or need social proof before you'll believe anything at all. Then they build the advertising to match. Thousands of variations of the same core message, each one engineered for a different personality type. A voter afraid of losing their job sees one version. A voter afraid of crime sees another entirely. Nobody sees the same ad twice. And nobody has any idea they've been sorted into a category at all. One digital strategist who has studied these tactics for years describes it like this. You're not persuading a population anymore. You're running thousands of tiny, invisible experiments on individual human beings, and you simply keep the ones that work. The system doesn't need to convince everyone. It only needs to convince the right few thousand people in the right handful of swing districts, in elections that are ultimately decided by margins thinner than most people realize. But that was just the beginning. Before this technology ever touches a Western democracy, it gets field tested somewhere else first. Somewhere the stakes, for the people running the experiment, feel lower. Reports later surfaced that the firm ran operations in fragile democracies overseas. Nigeria, Kenya, Trinidad, and Tobago. Places with weaker press oversight and populations who would never know and possibly never find out that they were the trial subjects for a system about to be aimed at much bigger targets. Fear-based messaging, racially charged disinformation, seeded deliberately to suppress turnout among specific ethnic groups. A dry run, disguised as local political consulting. Nobody outside the firm's walls understands the scale of what's happening. Regulators aren't looking. Facebook isn't looking. The public has no idea their psychological data has already become a weapon in a war they don't even know is being fought. By 2016, the firm is working simultaneously on two of the most consequential political campaigns of the modern era. One is the Brexit referendum in the United Kingdom. The other is the U.S. presidential election. The system made one fatal mistake, though. Somewhere inside all of it, it kept records. Inside the company, not everyone is comfortable with what they've built. Wiley starts to see the true shape of what he helped create, and the more he sees, the less he can live with it. He watches the firm test its darkest messaging on the most vulnerable populations first, refine what works, then quietly aim the sharpened version at the largest, most consequential democracy on the planet. He starts saving everything. Emails, internal memos, screenshots, signed contracts. He knows that one day, someone will need proof this actually happened, and he knows exactly what he's risking by holding on to it. For over a year, he sits on what he has. The weight of it follows him. The fear of what happens if the wrong person finds out. Former colleagues who could end his career with one phone call. Lawyers who could end his freedom with one filing. Then, in March 2018, he finally goes public. He hands the evidence over to journalists he trusts. The story breaks simultaneously in the New York Times and The Observer, and within hours, it's everywhere. The fallout is immediate and enormous. Facebook stock loses over $100 billion in value within days, one of the largest single corporate value drops in history at that point. Its founder is summoned before the U.S. Congress and the European Parliament to answer for what happened on his platform, questioned for hours by lawmakers who often barely understand the technology they're supposed to be regulating. Cambridge Analytica collapses within weeks, its name now radioactive, its London offices emptied out overnight, employees walking out with boxes under their arms and no severance. Regulators in the UK issue fines. Investigations open in multiple countries at once. For the first time in history, ordinary people around the world start asking a question they had genuinely never had to ask before. What does an app actually know about me? And who else gets to use it? This is where things get interesting. Because the technology didn't disappear. It evolved into something far more dangerous. The tools got cheaper, faster, and dramatically more sophisticated. Where Cambridge Analytica needed teams of analysts and months of processing time, artificial intelligence can now generate thousands of hyper-targeted messages in seconds. Messages tailored not just to your general political leanings, but to your exact emotional pressure points, tested and refined in real time based on how you actually react. How long you pause on a headline, whether you scroll past or stop and read. One researcher who studies digital influence operations for a living frames it simply. In 2016, they were using a hammer. What exists now is closer to a scalpel that operates entirely on its own, learning and adjusting faster than any regulator, in any country, can realistically track. What happened next changed the way elections are fought, everywhere, permanently. Campaigns worldwide now openly build data operations modeled on what Cambridge Analytica pioneered, just with better legal disclaimers and far quieter methods. Data brokers buy and sell behavioral profiles legally, in enormous bulk, with dramatically less scrutiny than the scandal that supposedly ended all of this ever received. AI-generated political messaging, synthetic voices, and deep-faked endorsements have moved from theoretical fears in a congressional hearing to documented reality in elections across multiple continents. The uncomfortable truth is this. The system that caused global outrage in 2018 wasn't dismantled because it stopped working. It was shut down because, for once, it got caught. Consider a single voter in a swing district somewhere in America, someone who never took that quiz, never heard the name Cambridge Analytica, never knowingly handed over a single piece of personal data to anyone. Their Facebook friend did, years earlier, on a lunch break, for fun. And that alone was enough. Their profile existed. It was scored. It was targeted. All without their knowledge, without their consent, and without any real way for them to ever find out it happened. That's the part that never sat right with the people who exposed this story from the inside. It was never really about the 270,000 people who clicked. It was about the 87 million who never even got the chance to say no. So today, when you scroll past a political ad that feels like it was made specifically for you, that faint, unsettling sense that it somehow knows exactly what you're afraid of, that isn't a coincidence, and it isn't paranoia. It's the direct descendant of a personality quiz that 270,000 people casually clicked on over a decade ago, on a lunch break, for fun. Wiley has spoken publicly since about building a plane before anyone had bothered to write the rules for flying it. Nobody had decided yet whether that plane should even be allowed to take off in the first place. By the time regulators finally tried to ground it, it had already changed the outcome of 2 major national votes and quietly rewritten the rulebook for every political campaign that came after it. The firm itself is gone now. Its name survives mostly in documentaries, in congressional transcripts, and in a handful of academic case studies. But the architecture it built, the underlying belief that an entire population can be broken down into psychological profiles and picked apart one individual fear at a time, that didn't die when the company did. It got quietly absorbed into the mainstream infrastructure of how modern elections are run, everywhere, by everyone. The uncomfortable question that remains isn't whether this kind of system exists anymore. It's whether any of us would even recognize it if it were running right now, quietly, on the device sitting in your pocket, deciding in real time which version of the truth you get to see next.